Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. My name's Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, a 7th-year doctoral student in clinical psych, another bozo on the bus, and I care about you.
And I'm LouiLou. My pronouns are he and him. I am in recovery for crystal meth and alcohol, and I am always in search of balance. Yes, and each week we will provide and create a safe space for conversations about topics of recovery.
Our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
Exactly, but before we do that, like, share, and comment on this episode.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, ding that bell.
What happened to that part?
You know what? I'm trying to remember the other words.
All right, and now the disclaimer. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on At the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. The material and information shared here is for general information purposes only. In other words, we are just friends behind a mic here to entertain you.
I thought you were.
I have like mixed feelings about having a kiki.
Okay, that's fine. It's like
we can't. Well, maybe we should talk about it not on air.
That's like cultural appropriation. Let's have a kiki.
Of whose culture? Ours.
Okay, you're right. Yeah. So then, where's the problem?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be back in the studio. What I was thinking, I was telling you about this before. It's like it's really hard to engage when you're coming in remotely. So, Bonnie, if you're listening, I want to throw up the signs and let you know you're a rock star, because that, she was able to. Maybe that's why she's not on anymore.
She was over it. She was over it
because they were talking. They would talk over me. Anyway. It's all good.
Bonnie Violet can hold her own.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So that's how you're doing?
I'm good. I'm really good. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Really nothing to report. Today, you know how it's raining, and I don't hate the rain, but I have these LED lights that you can change the color of. And so today, because I hate how gray it gets, I was like, what are the LED colors that make you happy? Can you guess what colors make you happy?
Like red and blue?
No. You're half true. It's blue.
Blue and yellow, huh? Like blue and yellow. Well, the red, I heard red makes you like kind of angry, so I like to be mad. I'm sorry. Sue me.
So right now I have shades of blue in my apartment.
Is this why you've been saying nice things about my blue?
I said it once about your sweater.
Once was enough.
It's a really nice blue sweater. It even looks better on camera than it does in person.
Wow.
That wasn't supposed to. That's kind of like when someone says, wait, you look better in pictures. No one's ever said this to me, but you look better in pictures. I didn't say that about you. I'm just saying.
No, but usually what happens with me is like people say your pictures don't do you justice.
Yeah, I get that too. Or like you look so much better in person.
Yeah, exactly.
If
you didn't know, we're talking about hookup culture.
Yeah, hookup culture.
You show up and open the door, and oops, the door closes again.
Yeah. You know what? I have a friend. He has a line he goes to. He says if someone shows up to his place or he goes somewhere, and it's not like the person he expected to, his go-to line is, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're not the person I was expecting."
Oh, okay.
Or something like that.
That's very mature.
It's a very like diplomatic way of going.
I usually look out of the peek hole, and if I see him coming, I don't answer the door. I don't do that. I don't do that. That's evil.
That's so sad.
No, I don't do that.
That's so sad. Well, you don't go to hookup apps for self-esteem.
No. Okay, I don't. Or I would like to think that I don't. But some people do. So I mean, I don't want to be making broad statements about.
And next week's episode, we'll be talking about. So today's topic. Do you want to talk about today's topic?
That's why I'm here.
That's why he's here. So today's topic is nicotine, caffeine, poppers, and sugar. Are these addictions too?
Are they?
Well, so one of the things I think is interesting is that poppers is on there. So let me slow down. So I did some research because I was like, when did all of these things kind of become an issue? Right? Like, what's the history behind alcohol and poppers and nicotine? And they all have a very rich history. And a lot of it tends to be really political. Poppers, I didn't know this, but I forget, I don't know how to say the name, or I didn't look at it, but it actually used to be used in hospitals. as a way to relax muscles and dilate veins, muscle dilation.
Oh, so that's how, like, because I thought from record cleaner to to guys using it, I thought, like, I was trying to figure out, how did somebody know that?
It started off, it was originally used medicinally.
Oh, wow.
It was originally used medicinally. And then it didn't become the first documented use of poppers as something that's used recreationally was in 1964. And then there was something called the poppers craze that started in the 1970s.
You know what?
Mr. Poppers craze.
When you said poppers, you were wondering why poppers was on this. I was just thinking about that too, because those others are a little more socially acceptable, like nicotine, sugar.
Well, that's what I was thinking about, is that there are all of these things. So, for example, even alcohol consumption, because I was like, as a sober person, of course, I have one way of thinking about alcohol. So I was thinking, what is the history exactly behind alcohol? And I found a couple interesting things. One is that on average, I think it was in the 1700s, on average, the citizens of the colonies, they would drink on average 7 gallons of alcohol a year, which is double the amount that we drink now. Isn't that crazy? 7 gallons.
Wait.
And they used to drink it like all the time. They breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You would have it.
Wait, you mean 7 gallons a year? Because that sounds like a couple months for me and my friends when we were drinking on a regular.
And that is the problem.
Yeah, I know.
That's the problem. So yeah, 7 gallons, which is basically double the amount. I think the average amount that people drink now.
When I lived in Mountain View, we had these half-gallon jugs because we had a brewery, the Tide House, and we would all. On Mondays, we would watch sports. we would fill our jugs up, and then we would go and get it again. So every week we had at least a gallon.
That's a really good story.
It was.
I used to drink gallons of Carlo Rossi by myself.
Now that's a better story because the beer I was drinking was at least classy.
Yeah, Carlo Rossi, wine in a clear ass container. Okay. So let's stay on track.
Yeah.
So alcohol, people were drinking it. Of course. So it kind of fell out of favor after World War II, because after World War II, a lot of our liquor was coming from Germany, and so after so there was a lot of stuff going on. So like when we separated from the United Kingdom, I'm like, where did we separate from when we were separating from England? They refused to import rum because we were drinking a lot of rum, and so what we started to do is we had corn in abundance. There was like the corn surplus or something like that, and so we started making whiskey. And so whiskey was cheaper than milk and coffee, and so we were drinking whiskey all the time. And in fact, it was cleaner than water, so you were drinking whiskey regularly, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you would have what's called an eye opener, which is what you drank in the morning.
Oh,
and then you would have a nightcap.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's kind of a brief. So after World War I. We stopped drinking rum because, or anything that was imported from Germany because,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So that's a brief history of alcohol. Oh, one more thing. And so then there was Prohibition, which I think was 1933. That was lifted. And then 2 years later is when AA was founded.
the two,
right? Isn't that interesting?
Exactly.
I thought that was interesting. That then we had AA 2 years later. So that's that. And then nicotine. Let's see, 15, 16. It was also used medicinally.
I was thinking
Isn't that interesting?
There are a lot of things. There are a lot of drugs or whatever that they all start at the hospital.
Yeah.
And,
cocaine.
And somebody was brilliant enough to say, hey, I wonder what it would be like if I did this at home.
I'm going to, yeah,
absolutely.
So I think, anyway, I bring all of that up to say that I think it's interesting because all of these things have a history and some of it is politically charged. And so go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, no. Finish.
Well, what I wanted to say is like, okay, so as a sober person, I'm in an abstinence only program, right? So as a sober person, I have a very different relationship to alcohol and all of these other substances. And so some of these things are kind of controversial, right? Like poppers, for example. I didn't even know poppers were an issue until maybe a few years ago when someone said that their sponsor told them that they had to reset their date because they had used poppers. But I thought I thought people just use poppers to bottom.
I think that people were using poppers on the dance floor and doing their thing. I think that, like, I don't know in AA if it's specifically stated that you can't use poppers. I think that's clear in other programs like NA and CMA, simply because it's written in the literature. Because I have heard rumblings and conversations about people who are in AA just thinking that alcohol is their issue. I mean, it becomes another thing. I think it's a personal thing for each individual.
Poppers?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. As usual, folks listening at home, if you have any comments, what do you think about poppers? Are you doing them right now?
The thing I know exactly is to listen to us. The thing that I was going to say while you were talking, so knowing that all of these things had their very pleasant start in hospitals and they were used for the reasons that whatever reasons they were used, suggests to me that they're not all bad.
Well, nothing is, right?
Exactly. I think that it is, what I've always heard is like anything in moderation is okay. And I'm an alcoholic, and so I don't do moderation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's across the board. A friend of mine who is at work during the show, he texted me a couple of questions. And one of the things he said is, so are we all just practicing some form of harm reduction? Is there really such a thing as abstinence? Is harm reduction reduce use or shifting to moderate use of another substance?
I love those questions. Yeah. I think that we are all practicing some form of harm reduction. Harm reduction doesn't have to speak just to your intake of illicit substances or what have you. Harm reduction is about, like, I don't go out at night, or I don't walk on a dark street without, like, being aware. I think about my safety, and that's my harm reduction.
Yeah.
For me, I always say that abstinence is also, abstinence and harm reduction are not these separate things. My form of harm reduction is abstinence. I find that I put anything whatsoever in my body, it can cause trouble. So that's my form of abstinence.
Right. And I think
my form of harm reduction.
Harm reaction?
Harm reduction.
Harm reduction.
I was trying to get it out.
It's just fine. It's fine. You did your best.
I'm okay.
So with AA, I think about, all right, so there's a theory here, right? So it's a spiritual program. It's an abstinence only program, right? Mm-hmm. And so that is the way I choose to kind of form my relationship with alcohol, right?
Now, is it an abstinence program, or is it an abstinence only from alcohol? Because that's a thing.
Well, that's what I mean. Just assume I'm talking about alcohol. Uh-huh. Yeah. So, and then you see all of these other programs that have come from 12-step, right? So you have OA, Overeaters Anonymous, right? Or you have Nicotine Anonymous.
You can't have food.
Right. And so in those programs, or you have Sex Addicts Anonymous, or you have Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, right? And so what I see happening when you look at all of those other programs is an acknowledgement that moderation is necessary, right? For example, with love and sex, those things are okay in moderation. Similarly with food, right? In moderation. Now, with Overeaters Anonymous, there are very kind of strict parameters around, like, the kind of things that they can and cannot. I can't really speak to OA because I'm not in OA, but I think there's a thing like you can't eat processed foods, or maybe it's like sugars or something like that. But it does seem like we're all kind of working a program of moderation. So the whole theory thing that I was thinking of with alcohol, which is in AA, we operate under the premise, or on the premise that to drink is to die, and that we have a spiritual malady, right? And so because that's the way we think of it, that means that behavior follows from that, which is we do not drink.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Or say another program, I think Smart Recovery, is that a harm reduction program? And
Smart Recovery I believe that Smart Recovery is an abstinence program. It's just not spiritual based in that same sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So alcohol and moderate. But anyway, the point is that, you do have these other programs where you're able to drink. And go ahead.
Well, what I know to be true, like, and I've talked about this a bunch with sponsees and other folks. Early on in recovery for me, I needed the structure of this abstinence only model. And I think the longer that you stay in recovery and you work the program to the best of your ability and you get time, you realize what it is, it becomes what you need it to be. There are some people who, maybe have other issues where they find that inviting marijuana back into their life is something that they do. I am a firm believer that, you do whatever works for you, especially in relationship to a doctor or whatever, but you got to be okay with the fact that there are people who are not going to get it. And so you've got to be okay with the choices that you make, that's about it.
Oh, you mean with people who work their AA program in a way that maybe not as
absolutely.
common?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's like, obviously, it's like you go to a point, I'll speak for myself. I got to a point where I'm so this, that, whatever about my program, and I get overzealous. And then without knowing, I am putting on other people. Like, if your program doesn't look like mine and my program is shaky, then of course I'm going to be questioning your program. And really the key is to make sure that for me, my program is solid, my relationship with, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what, for me, what I really like about AA is that it gave me God back. Like my favorite step is the third step. And the reason why I share that is because for me, AA is so much more than just about drinking, absolutely, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize is that drinking is such a small part of what it means to be in a tiny part.
Yeah, exactly.
A really, really tiny part. And so it's this entire structure around it that to me works, right? It gives me a structure to handle conflict, a structure to think about my behaviors. It literally, all the good things that I have in my life have come because I choose to live my life in the structure. And admittedly, I'm in therapy and I also have a psychiatrist, right? But it's taken all of these things to work for me. But I want to go back to the question about like whether or not, sugar, nicotine, and caffeine are these addictions too. I mean, that's the question to me feels really misleading because obviously what we're thinking of here is much bigger than that. So of course they can be addictions, right? Like sugar, I think is like it's a new pandemic that we've been in for the last 5 years.
Sugar's the new black.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it was UCSF that said that, we are in a sugar crisis because everything has sugar in it. And there's so many people that have diabetes, et cetera. So of course sugar can be addiction. And of course nicotine can be an addiction. I think maybe the question here is, what do we do with those addictions, or like, how do we think about those addictions? And I think our relationship to all of those things, maybe socially, is very different.
What I will tell you, being somebody who has an addiction to alcohol and crystal meth, if somebody has an issue with how I do my sugar, or how I do I don't smoke, but how I do other things, I always say, like, if I'm really, going crazy with the sugar, I always remind myself that this is not crystal meth, So it's like,
right.
Yeah. So it's like, I think for someone who, I don't know, it's a luxury for someone who doesn't have like, issues with harder substances.
Yeah. Well, you want to hear in a way that I feel like I'm a little hypocritical.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so
I'm looking forward.
You're looking forward to this?
Yeah.
So one of the way it just occurred to me a second ago, like one of the ways that I feel like I'm a hypocrite is that, I told you that I did the ketamine treatment for PTSD, and I went through this whole thing with my sponsor, and I like went through my sponsor, and I went through like my therapist, and it was my therapist's idea. And so I went through it, right?
Uh-huh.
And ketamine was never an issue for me. But I have a diagnosis of PTSD. It's been known to treat PTSD. Well, I'm done with the series and my life has changed. It was a life changer, right?
Okay.
Like, it's been amazing. Okay, this is why I feel like I'm a hypocrite. If someone told me they were smoking weed because they have a prescription for it, I feel like I might have a reaction to that. And I wonder what that is. And I wonder if it's because of maybe like the the politics around weed or the kind of culture around weed? Or is there this way, for example, that I am privileging one thing over the other just because, I don't know, maybe it's more controlled, right? Like I'm under the supervision of a doctor where with weed for me, it just seems like everyone was telling their doctors they had anxiety so that they could get medical card, but now you can buy it recreationally.
When you think that, and I'm not sure. I wonder, maybe you're just using this as an example. But when you think that, like, do you ever go back to some of the feelings you were having when you? I remember having a conversation with you about the ketamine treatment, and your feelings about, how other people were feeling, and suggesting to you that this is the relationship you have with your doctor. I mean, do you ever go back to that and like think, wait a minute, I mean, are you just feeling like you're hypocritical because that you're having those thoughts, or do you actually express them? Say, hey, you're not sober.
I don't express them.
Yeah.
No, I don't express them. And I think the reason why I don't express them is, well, they're just not useful. Their mind, ideas and feelings can change all the time, So I think that's one of the things. I also just the other day, I think yesterday I went to a 12 and 12 meeting and we were talking about the third tradition, which is you're a member if you say you're a member. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. And so when I'm in the rooms, like I try to think of it in that way, which is like, who the hell am I to kind of create parameters around somebody else's program? And that would be really hypocritical of me, because there are plenty of people in the rooms where I'm who become kind of like these custodians or like these authorities about what recovery looks like.
Absolutely. I think that, honestly, I think that with all these things that we're talking about as possible issues, I think for me, the key is my awareness. Like, how am I using things? I mean, because when it comes down to it, it's like with practicing abstinence, especially in CMA, we talk about like, am I using this to make me feel different? Am I using it to change or alter anything? And if I'm doing that, then that's when it's an issue. That's when an issue or a problem. And that's when I consider if I need to changing my sobriety.
What if that thing that you're trying to change is your butthole?
Well, if that's the case, then whatever conversation you have in conjunction, I'm
talking about poppers. I'm like, and half kidding, but like, what if that, like, I guess what I'm getting at is that it's like it gets
poppers,
tricky.
But you know what? Honestly, poppers it's not that simple with poppers, because that, if all it did was affect, your anal stuff, your soft muscles, but every time
your smooth muscles.
But every time that I've used poppers, it has really taken me out of myself. It really kind of changes you, and it can be a way without knowing of checking out. Because I would always say, "Oh God, I feel so stupid." Yeah, no, it's like, so if that doesn't work.
So I think that's interesting, right? So I don't use poppers, but I know some people in their program that do use poppers, and I don't have opinion about it either way, but I do know that for some people, and men and women alike, it makes sex much easier for them. And it seems like if there's some utility to using them, then I suppose, it doesn't matter what I think, but what I'm considering here is that, if there's some utility here and it isn't being abused, that who gives a fuck?
Yeah, no, well, that's what I was saying earlier. It's like, first off, it's like I have a hula hoop and I stay inside my hula hoop. It's none of my business. It's none of my business how you do what you do. I don't use poppers because it really kind of it was more about like me changing how I felt. Because I wasn't using it to relax any muscles or anything. I was just using it to participate in whatever I was participating in a different way.
Yeah. What's interesting about what you're saying is that you can actually apply that. I was just thinking about how you can apply that to all of them. You can apply it to like poppers, sugar, and nicotine. Like, are you using these things to check out, right? Yeah. Which that is the thing, right? But God, but even that, like, I feel like every time I try to like get to something concrete, there's gray in that, because there's so many different things that we use to check out, right? Like there's technology. Now there's like Technology Anonymous, right? Yeah. They're like specialty clinics.
Whoa. Technology Anonymous?
Isn't there something like that?
I feel attacked.
Yeah. The point is, you know what I mean? There's just all these different ways that like we can check out. And I think maybe that's the problem, right? Is that like maybe pathologizing needing to check out is the problem.
Yeah.
Because
it's
Media Addicts Anonymous, is that what it's called? Thank you, Brandon. Media Addicts Anonymous.
It's not always, like, in this day and age, it's not always a bad thing.
No, I agree to check out. We have a comment. Do you want to take that?
Yeah.
Jaylon. Okay, Jaylon writes, I honestly feel like everybody has their own vices, and I've even heard a lot of fellows express theirs. In my opinion, all caps, people still want to be able to exert some type of control in their lives and managing any one of the things listed. However, like any good addict who's trying to rationalize and or hold on to doing what they want to do, the literature does use words like advocates and suggests complete abstinence, which is the loophole for those who intellectualize the program.
Absolutely. It's like that advocate and suggest is like important.
Yeah. The intellectualizing, yesterday somebody said about the traditions that these are traditions. They're not.
Thank you, Jaylon.
They're not. Thank you, Jaylon. Someone said yesterday, oh, these are the traditions. They're not rules. But I feel like when it comes to addiction, like they just knew who they were writing for.
Exactly. And usually I appreciate when people say, okay, so we say these are suggestions, but they're suggestions like you should breathe oxygen.
Right. Or like if you're jumping out of a airplane, we suggest you pull the
ripcord, like have a parachute.
Yeah, I get that.
And people are very judgmental. It's like, it's a suggestion, but if you don't do what I suggested, I'm going to talk about you. We have another comment.
Oh, another comment. Let's take it.
Yes.
Benji writes,
I really appreciate both of your perspectives in this conversation. Glad you're touching on checking out and how social media could just as easily be on this list. We love you, Benji.
Good to see you yesterday, Benji.
Yes.
So, so let's talk about social media and just about checking out. And I think that, that there is this pathologizing of checking out, right? And I think we need to be able to check out. Like
Absolutely.
we need to be able to give our brains a rest. And I think there is a way that we kind of privilege one thing over the other. Like some might say, well, it's, instead of hopping on your Instagram, why don't you go for a run? Or why don't you read a book? Or why don't you?
And I'm usually like, why don't you mind your own business? No, truth of it is like, there needs to be a separate AA program for you getting to my shit.
What about that addiction?
Well, I don't know. It's like, okay, so I sometimes deal with anxiety. I sometimes deal with discomfort, especially like I'm a little better. Like for those who know me, it's like I come across as very outgoing and very kind of extroverted. Abrasive. And I find sometimes when I'm in certain situations, I am uncomfortable and I don't want to be around. And it's, even though I center myself, I don't necessarily want to be there. And so a safe way to kind of take care of myself sometimes is to get on my phone, to do something else or whatever. And of course you have folks who don't do social media and they're like, this is uncomfortable for me.
Well, right. There are people like myself that don't do social media in the same way that you do. Right. Because I am on social media for different things.
Mm-hmm.
Like LinkedIn, I guess, is social media. But I don't. I don't know why I'm feeling like I have to defend myself. But
you don't.
I don't. But with social media, for example, I won't use it. Well, I used to use Reddit to check out because it has like the infinite scroll and like it's really kind of anonymous. You don't really have to deal with people. Although someone told me there's a lot of porn on Reddit. I didn't know that there was a lot of porn on Reddit. It was one of my straight guy friends.
There's porn everywhere. It's like if you're careful.
Did you know?
Porn.
Yeah, porn. Interesting facts about porn. There are porn statistics. I think that Pornhub gathers, and the numbers are astronomical. Maybe that's another episode, but so anyway, Reddit. I used to use Reddit like regularly, and then I'm like, oh my god, I'm losing too much time on here. I also don't like using social media that influences how I think or feel, and some of it is really subtle. Like one of the things I noticed recently is that I love cat videos, right? Like cat videos are fucking hilarious, and then recently I noticed that I'm getting these cat videos of like buff guys who are chiropractors for animals. And I'm like, this feels so fucking targeted.
A chiropractor
for cats.
For cats.
Or for dogs. And I noticed, and then I'm like, why? This is really suspicious. And then one day I was watching one of the dog trainers that I really like watching. And somebody said, it was like, why doesn't your dog have a girlfriend? And then he says in the video, because the dog, like myself, is a homosexual.
Oh.
He said it with a funny lips like that. And I thought, this is really interesting. This algorithm is out of control. Because today I saw one with a cat chiropractor, and it was like this beautiful guy, like in a tank top. And I'm like, you don't look like a normal chiropractor. What is the point that I'm trying to get here? Oh, social media. So I don't like any social media that is trying to influence how I feel or think.
Absolutely.
And all social media is trying to do that.
Well, you know what it comes down to? It goes back to
Does that sound crazy?
Well, no, but it goes back to this idea of moderation. I think that if you're spending all your time looking at cat videos or whatever, of course you're going to eventually find something wrong. But if it's just like, okay, I'm going to take this moment in between whatever just to check this cat video out, and then I'm going to put my phone down. But if you're spending every waking hour scrolling through, guess what? At some point, you're going to find what you're not wanting to see.
Yeah. So this is interesting that we should talk about media. So
what about media?
Well, what about? So one of the things I learned so I have an MS in applied psych, and I only share that because there's a lot of applied psych is used in the tech sphere. And one of the first things that I learned was that there was a time when content was very important, when we were trying to get people, we were trying to use messages to change behavior or to encourage behavior. And now what we do, so we were using thoughts to behavior, I think is the way we did it, thoughts to behavior. Except now what they were like, the new approach is behavior to influence thoughts, right? So it's just like, if you ever notice, if there's like an ad for a game, they now, in order to get past the ad, you have to interact with the game.
Yeah, I know. I saw
right.
That.
That's a very different sequence of like neural connections that are being made. Right.
It's a pain.
It's a pain. So the point
makes you spend the money so you don't have to watch a commercial.
Well, and you're interacting with the thing, right? So, for example, you are more likely to buy something that you are able to touch.
That's true, actually.
Right. Like
the apps on the phone. Yeah.
Right. And so I feel I'm so hyper aware of all the different things that are trying to influence how we think. And so that's why I avoid social media. And just in general, I think because of recovery, I am hyper aware of ways that I'm trying to like change how I feel or think, right? And sex is like one of those things. This was the other thing I was going to say earlier about how some of these things are really subtle, like so sugar and poppers and nicotine. These are things that we can do in private.
Yeah.
Right. Or these are things that, they're relatively okay.
Or these actually, I think the problem is these are things you can do in public, like especially with the sugar and the nicotine, like people are using.
Well, and if you live in the TL, you could do meth in public.
Yeah, this is true. But what I'm saying is like those things and alcohol, those things that seem like they're the norm, because obviously there was a time where I was drinking and carrying on because that's what people my age did, woohoo, go out and have a good time or whatever. And that's like the issue. Yeah, I just wanted to share that.
So I'm mindful of time. It's 9:33. So it's 4:33. Sorry. I don't know why that number looked like a 9 to me. Okay. I was just thinking about how with anything, having structure and routines, we've talked about routines before, but having structure and routines, et cetera, helps me feel grounded. Right. And I think that one of the things that gets disrupted when someone is doing something addictively is this decay of routines, right? It's when like sugar or nicotine or poppers starts to unravel all of these other things that are keeping you contained.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like those commercials for the cigarettes, like the I don't know what group it is, but they talk about the relationship you have with cigarettes, where cigarettes always pulling you outside, always making you do things you don't want to do.
A cigarette is?
No, yeah. Well, it's a very kind of like biased kind of commercial because they clearly want you to stop smoking, but it's like I think the whole idea is that when you start smoking, you sign a contract and you're beholden to this until you break free.
Yeah. I hear that. I was just thinking about commercials in general and how like commercials are just, they're so ridiculous. But like, I think about like, there's always like, when people are drinking, they're always so happy, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm always like, where's the DUI in that commercial? Or like, where's the person throwing up in the background, or the person confessing that they've been having an affair for the last 5 years?
But those commercials are not for folks who drink a lot. Those commercials are simply for people who know how to finish half a drink and leave.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, I was just on a business trip, and one of my colleagues, she's like, oh, I had 2 glasses of wine, and I was ready for bed. I was like, okay, ma'am.
That's the beginning of the night.
2 glasses of wine. I stole 2 glasses of wine.
I drank everything on the bar because it was there. Like everybody's empty glasses, even the things with cigarettes.
You know what I would do is I would watch people's glasses when I was broke and I was drinking, and I would like wait for them to drop, like put the glass on, and I would take the glass.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we have 10 minutes left. But I just felt needed to say that Brandon put up the 2 5s. So I guess, what do we do now? What do we do with like? So we've landed on an answer, which we don't really need the answer. But.
No, we don't. It's like, I mean, like I have been saying, is like, I think that it is important for you to decide. If it's something that is really kind of like messing with like who you are and how you're trying to do things, if it's causing you grief, discomfort, or whatever. The important thing is for us to decide for ourselves and take action there. Like I can hear people say, "Oh, this is addictive," or whatever. But if it works for me, it works for me. You know, that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I think too about do you have like the peace of mind that you want?
No, absolutely.
You know, does your life look the way you want it to look? And if not, like I often have to ask myself, what behaviors, one of the more like humbling, sombering facts is like my life looks the way it does because of the decisions I've made. Exactly. Right. And so sometimes I have to look at, okay, like what are these decisions that I'm making? And like anything else, I can blame people. Mm-hmm. I can blame, I eat this way because I don't have time to cook for myself, actually, let me pause there. I feel like we should just quickly like honor that. And there's certain circumstances that make, sugary foods. I'm thinking here about like class and how, if you're living in poverty, or if you don't have like the income, right? Like the food you have access to tends to be really high in sugar.
Absolutely.
Right. Or if you think about, not poppers, nicotine, like, I mean, there's a way that I think about like Newports, for example. I was born and raised in the projects, and like there were Newport ads everywhere.
Like the only place you can get like a pineapple soda is the ghetto. No.
Really?
No, well, certain urban areas, it's like you can't go to Nob Hill and get a pineapple soda. You can't. Like they don't have them there.
Interesting.
Like all the fun flavors. And that's clear. It's like I'm all because it's a conspiracy. They're out to get us with sugar.
Yeah, I think maybe where I'm trying to land here is that like it's at once all very complicated, right? Like the story is never kind of clear. There are a bunch of multiple different factors, like from politics to economics to like psychology, etc. Like all those things at play, and at the same time, it can actually be quite simple.
Yeah.
Right. Going back to this idea, like, is it ruining your life?
Yeah. And it comes down to like we get to focus on our and if you're listening and you find that those are questions that you need to really ask yourself, you don't have to do them by yourself. There are so many different programs.
Yeah.
There's so many different A's like that you get to kind of address your issues with nicotine, your issues with, well, I don't think there's an issue. There's a Poppers Anonymous, but there should be, because I've heard a lot of people who
probably NA.
I've had a lot of friends who struggle with that. And before I would laugh it off, but the truth of it is like if there's something that is causing me discomfort or that is affecting my serenity, I get to work the steps around them, and so do you.
Yeah, if you do 12 steps.
Well, steps are. I think I'm calling them steps, but more on a large way. It's like whatever processes you have.
Right.
Those are your steps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there.
I feel that. There was something you said that I wanted to respond to, and I just don't remember now. We have 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. 5 minutes.
Poppers. There was something, not poppers. Oh, well, I was thinking too about like, how do you know you have issues with poppers? And I'm like,
if your nose is burned around here.
I mean, if you go to the bat, like if you have to take your poppers to take a shit.
Well, no, I think that like, okay, so
anyone here?
I used to go when I would go to the End Up, I would walk through. The End Up is this club in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And I would walk, like I would be completely sober and what have you, or sober enough, but I would walk through the partition and walk in, and all of a sudden I'd start yawning. And to me, that felt like you need to do some drugs. So comparing that to like this idea of poppers or whatever, it's like if you can't hook up, if you're in a situation where you always feel like you have to go reach for the poppers, or you can't have a normal kind of connection, and it's not about you trying to expand your butt muscles or whatever, that is something
you might have an issue with poppers.
That's something to think about, you know? Yeah. It's about thinking about it. You get to choose. You get to decide if you're going to think about it, or you could do what you want.
Like if you can't have conversations with people unless you do a bump of poppers, what do you call that? A bump? A snort, a sniff, you might have a problem with. You might have a problem with poppers.
Yeah,
I think similarly with sugar, it's like, you know, if you find that the only way you're able to comfort yourself is by eating a lot of food, like that's something to think about.
Eating a lot of sugary foods, because
I mean, it's not even just sugary foods.
Yeah, but it's like, but is it an issue with sugar if you're just eating a lot of food? Then it's an issue.
Well, I mean,
with
it's
food.
like, right. The takeaway is still the same. Like
and
if you're
you
finding
eat a lot, but that's no. You don't have.
you
don't have that problem
with this microphone. Well, no, I mean, well, like honestly, I think it's because I've been able, you know, like I've hidden it really well. I mean, like I've gotten help. I'm not in like OA or anything like that, but like I started working with a nutritionist and I started working with a trader, and because I was like,
I've gotten a couple pictures from Anthony from behind, and I was like, wow,
that's because I'm Puerto Rican. Okay. That's genetics. But I feel like, you know, like this is something I've talked about like briefly during other episodes, which is like there were these issues that I was dealing with like privately that no one really knows about. You're like, no one, because I'm not like obese, people didn't like, they wouldn't think like, oh, he's having an issue with eating. No, when I would like, I was just like gorging myself. And then I didn't even know that this was a thing, but I was like eating in private. Or like I would lie to people. It was just really weird, you know? And I love sugar, and I was just noticing how I was consuming sugar.
And it can't, I'm sorry, and I need to apologize. It can't help that Bonnie and I were constantly commenting on it, because it's like,
oh, no. That's totally fine. No. That's absolutely fine. We're having a process. We're having like a moment on air. No. That's absolutely fine. Like it was, no. That's absolutely fine. What I'm trying to get at is that, you know, like I had to look at these things myself, you know, like how am I eating? Like, why am I eating when I feel really stressed out? Like, I didn't know that I was like eating when I was stressed out, or why is it when I go, like, for example, if I were to go out like to a party or something like that, because I'm not drinking or using, I would normally look for the food. And I didn't realize that that's what I was doing, that I was like looking for the food, because I was essentially,
it's a shield. It's safety too. It's
yeah. Like, you know, like I don't really have to talk if I'm eating. And, what was the other thing? Like sugar with nicotine. I mean, I used to smoke. I don't really, I stopped smoking in my 20s. When I did smoke,
I never smoked. I couldn't eat and I couldn't drink and eat at the same time. All of those things were individual. I compartmentalized. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was.
You know what we didn't talk about is caffeine.
Because we're in denial.
Yeah. I drink a lot of caffeine. Oh, God, I drink a lot of caffeine.
We can talk,
I don't even know where to go.
We can talk about caffeine after.
Yeah, we'll talk. Yeah, when we turn off the mic and we keep talking. But yeah, the caffeine. Like I drink so much caffeine, and the crazy thing about it is like I literally am a maintenance drinker. You know what I mean? Like I will have a crazy headache if I don't drink a cup of coffee. I always have coffee. If I don't have coffee, I have caffeine pills in my.
Oh, okay. I usually have like. I stopped drinking coffee that way. Like at the beginning of Shelter in Place, like I stopped drinking coffee and I was just drinking tea. Still caffeine in it, but not as not the same way. And then now I just have 1 cup, and maybe not even a full cup a day.
It doesn't. Go ahead.
Because I just really I was, I didn't want it to kind of exacerbate, you know the word.
Yeah.
My anxiety.
I just realized we need to start wrapping up for the air stuff. So
we always do this.
Yeah,
like,
sorry. Well, we have 1 minute to do it. Ready?
Okay.
And then we can keep talking
Yeah.
when the camera's off. What's that back there?
The Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community.
We provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth.
Yes, and our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community opportunity and support.
You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us, at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast.
Yes, and tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I know. When we go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels.
Find us wherever you listen to podcasts.
Absolutely. And thank you so much.
It's your turn.
I know. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Stephen and Scott.
Thank you, Stephen and Scott, our new production
and
team.
all of you wonderful people who
come and also keep listening afterward. So like once we go off air, as you know, we'll continue talking so you can catch the next part of this conversation on our podcast. Okay, bye.
Yes.
So caffeine.
Well,
so that feels like the lesser of the evils, obviously. But
wait a minute, is it the lesser? Because now that I think about it, I was coming off as, oh God, I don't want to do caffeine at all. I'm so much better. But I drink Red Bull.
You do drink Red Bull?
Oh God, yeah. I drink Red Bull. Sometimes I and I drink it whenever I do. I drink it to stay awake.
Yeah, I'm on a mission I'm officially off my psych meds because I don't need them right now. And I've been on this mission to you making faces at me. Oh, I thought I was catching you over
I was
here.
looking at you.
I've been on this mission to reduce the things that I'm consuming if I can, you know what I mean? And one of those things has been caffeine. I want to reduce my consumption of caffeine.
That's good.
And I noticed that's been really hard. And in part because I feel it's not one of those things I guess you could you could stop cold turkey, but I feel like that just sounds really painful. And maybe that's a conversation I need to have with a doctor.
But how do you titrate off of caffeine?
Well, you can do it with supplements. You can do you can start off with, I don't know. I have so much caffeine in a day. I have probably a whole pot of coffee in a day.
Well, question is, do you want to? I know you're saying you.
Oh yeah, because it doesn't even do what it used to do for me. It's not like it's helpful. Really, all it does is I'm maintenance drinking. I'm just doing it to avoid a headache and to avoid fatigue.
So have you relapsed? Is that a relapse?
On drinking coffee?
No.
I haven't tried to stop drinking coffee or caffeine in general, but I would like to reduce my consumption. I don't know that I would get rid of it completely because I do like taking pre-workout before I work out. And it's not that crazy. You know what I mean? But I would like to reduce my consumption. And I think it used to really interfere with my sleep for a really long time.
Oh, I can understand. I don't drink coffee after a certain time. I'm older. And so I don't drink caffeine because the last thing I need is to be sitting staring at the fucking walls.
Yeah, I stopped drinking. I won't drink coffee after 5 o'clock.
You better get you some coffee then.
What time is it? Well, I know I'm going to do some reading. I brought some reading with me to do while I'm here today. I'll probably have a cup of coffee, but like I said, it doesn't do what it used to do for me. One of my favorite, I have a favorite energy drink that I won't really drink anymore because it has crazy amounts of sugar, but it has 280 milligrams of caffeine in it. And I used to look forward to drinking it because it would, put a little pep in my step. And now it doesn't do anything. I maybe rot my teeth, but it doesn't really get me. I don't feel any.
I have to be careful. Even with Red Bull, I have to be careful with things like that because, if I have 3 Red Bulls, I'll be cracked out. And
really?
It'll give me that feeling
See, I would love to be cracked out. I haven't felt that's crazy, but you know what I mean. But I haven't felt that since I was maybe a teenager, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? But also, I abused cocaine and my ADHD meds when I was younger too. So my body doesn't really respond to stimulants anymore.
No, my body is like, it remembers. It's been a little while, but it remembers. It's like, because I was always, I mean, aside from alcohol, I was always wanting to go up. I was always like,
with caffeine. You know, that's one of the things when I think back when I was like a kid, and I'm like, were there ever any signs that like I was an alcoholic when I was a kid? And absolutely. Like, I remember when I learned that if you could have like caffeinated drinks and that could change the way you felt, like I was all about those.
I used to hear people talk about like, their first addiction was fantasy, and I didn't understand completely, but I realized that's the same with me. My first addiction was fantasy. I always imagined and dreamed that things were different, or I lived in a different family or whatever.
Yeah.
Or like I was just waiting for my rich parents to come and get me.
Yeah. I used to, as a kid, I pretend I had superpowers a lot.
I did that too.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably just part of a healthy imagination, but I do remember retreating a lot to my imagination, especially when like my environment felt intolerable. There's like a lot of violence and stuff around me.
Absolutely. It was.
Which is like, thinking about addiction and how painful. I forget who I was talking to, but I was just saying, I was talking to my dissertation chair, and she was, anyway, the conversation was, I was saying to her, like, living is really hard.
No, it is.
You know what I mean? Like for me, like having human feelings is difficult. You know what I mean? And I feel like some of us are are better resourced than others.
Well, especially now that we don't have quick go-to things to kind of snuff out feelings that are too much.
Right. And so I get addiction, you know, like I get it.
Yeah.
I 100% get it. That's it. I think I'm just thinking about like the amount of pain and like that it does, that when we retreat to these or we turn to these different things to help alleviate some of that anxiety or some of that pain, like it makes sense. Like, who wants to be in pain? Yeah. No one wants to be in pain. And there's almost like the other part of it, at least for me, is that, but I know there's something else on the other side of that, but I've needed so much support along the way, so much support, be it, like my psychiatrist or my therapist or the fellowship.
And the beautiful thing about it is that you were open to it. I think that's what it comes down to. It's like, there's all this support, especially we live in San Francisco. We are so fortunate. Very fortunate. But if I'm not open to it, none of that matters, And I'm so grateful I get to practice gratitude around the fact that, like, I always think about this, like when I was homeless. I didn't experience homeless in the same way because I had the wherewithal to go into the shelter system. And I just treated it like it was a different address. And I mentioned this because I was thinking, every day I see the same people out there kind of existing. Mm-hmm. I don't want to, I don't want to say making it, just being out there or whatever. And with the way the weather's been lately, it's like, oh man.
Yeah, it breaks my heart.
Yeah, it does.
It breaks my heart.
I always say a little prayer, like when I pass them, and that's a big thing because before I would say, "Get out of my way." It's like,
yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing with God. For me, it gets really complicated because I think with like all addictions, I've had to ask myself, well, like as a clinician, I have to take this stance that, there are multiple different things that are happening, right, that contribute to a position that someone is in. And then just kind of with my own self, because I can't be my own clinician, I have to think about like, okay, what choices am I making? Like, is there some autonomy? Do I have some autonomy in this? But I think I can also merge both of those things. And I do think there is some autonomy. And this goes back to, something that Bonnie Violet said months ago, where she was saying like, you have to know.
And
no. And another thing. No, like I do think you have to know, like you have to have a bit of information. Like, I don't think that, for some people who might be on the streets, like I believe that some of those people have no idea that their life could be different.
Oh yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And like, and so it's really easy to get angry with people who suffer from addiction, because if only you would make the right decision. But I do think there's some people who are constitutionally incapable.
Well, I think since we are talking about like folks who are on the street, I think a lot of times it's so easy to dismiss that it's an issue of addiction, when a lot of times it's mental, and it's not always easy to address that, because typically sometimes when you address that, you kind of nip the other things in the bud.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
And it's also like, I think about how there's so much, there's like a social charge behind all of the different things.
Yeah.
Right. Like when it comes to alcoholism, there's a way that it's placed socially, or if it comes to sugar, right? Like there's a compassion that we might have for maybe say someone who has a terminal illness than we might like someone who is overweight.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is really interesting, that I don't know really where to take that, but I was just thinking about how, there's a way that we look at smokers, for example.
Yeah.
And maybe it's cultural. Maybe it's because, my understanding of American culture as an American is that, we are very individualistic, and it really is about like, it's you against the world, and like, you need to make things happen. And it's, and so maybe that's where some of that comes from, around just like people needing to get themselves better. What are you? You wrap it up?
Yeah.
You can just say, let's wrap it up.
Well, yeah, because I have to.
You have to use the bathroom?
Thank you. Thank you.
Did you bring your poppers?
I did. I'm going to go in there and use them now
Okay.
to get started.
The answer to constipation.
This is great. It's like I absolutely love being able to kind of continue the conversation on, but it's like, it's a conversation that, it, like with all of our conversations, we need to have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I think we're done, Brandon.
Thank you.
Louis has to poop.
Oh my God.